This cardiac arrest incident involved an elderly male who went into cardiac arrest while outside. It was believed to possibly be a witnessed arrest, but that is unconfirmed. King County Sheriff Department arrived on scene and they initiated CPR. Squad 1 arrived on scene and began to apply the Plainfield AED. Squad 1 allowed the King County deputy to continue the compressions because they observed that he was doing pretty good compressions. And so instead of switching out with one of our members, they decided to go ahead and allow him to continue. And then that freed up hands to do other things, which was a pretty good thing. So this is going to be the first analyzed rhythm. We know that compressions were being done while the AED pads were placed. I know that because I can see some compressions right here, and that's what we like to see. First analyzed rhythm was a non-shockable rhythm. It took the compressor, which was the deputy, 4.5 seconds to get back on the chest. As soon as it said no shock advised, to the first compression was 4.5 seconds. That's pretty good being a person who hasn't probably practiced high-performance CPR. This incident was on video. Looking back on the video, you can see that the team leader at the time was giving pretty good direction to the deputy. Then that probably what constitutes or what contributed to the 4.5 seconds. So nice job there. Again, we're typically looking for around a 2-second pause from the point that says no shock advised to the first compression. But having a deputy on there 4.5 seconds, that's pretty good. Okay, this is going to be the second analyzed rhythm. Something to note here is that there's a lot of artifact, or there's a lot of motion. So all of this here is motion that was caused by the rescuers, either bumping into the patient or unfortunately we saw some hands on the patient while they were getting up to get out of the way to allow another compressor to come in. So we got to remember, we want to be close to the patient. We want the person that's going to be doing compressions to be hovering over the patient in anticipation to start compressions, but we don't want to be moving the patient too much. And the reason for that is if the AED notices that there's a lot of motion going on, it actually extends the analyzing phase. A typical AED analyzing phase can be around 8 seconds, and this was quite a bit longer, mainly because it detected motion, and so it wanted to double check the segments and double check the analyzing rhythm or the analyzed rhythm. So it took, again, 4.5 seconds to get back on the chest from the point that it says no shock advised to the first compression. At this point, I believe it was one of our providers that was there. Remember, we want to hover over the chest to minimize that pause. All right, this is going to be the third analyzed rhythm. As you can see, this analyzed rhythm is a lot shorter. It took 3 seconds from the point that it says no shock advised to the first compression. So nice job to the team for hovering and minimizing that time. Okay, this segment just shows the back plate. The back plate and the top piece was placed on a 2-part process with 30 compressions being done prior to either event happening. So 30 compressions were done, and at the 30th compression, the patient was lifted up by both arms and the airway member placed the back plate. It only took about 1.5 seconds to really put the back plate on. It was quite short. So nice job to the team for getting that done in a quick manner. Okay, this is going to be when the top plate piece of the ACCD was placed. It took 8 seconds from the point that the last compression to the first ACCD compression. Something to note, the team actually had pushed the 30-2 mode in this area right there. So that's only 4 seconds after the top piece on. That tells me that the top piece was fully on and it was ready to go. And it took a good couple seconds for the ACCD to kind of really wind up and start going. And the reason that it takes a couple seconds is because when you push that plunger down and you push the play button, whether that's the full play or the 30-2 mode, that top piece will adjust itself and measure the thickness of that chest. Based off the thickness of that chest, it goes through some sort of calculation, and then it'll do the appropriate compression depth for that patient. Not every patient has the same compression depth for the ACCD, and so that's why it takes a couple seconds. Next time you have the ACCD out and you're playing with it, notice that. Put the plunger down push the play or the 32 button, and you'll notice that that plunger will kind of go up and down just a little bit, and all that's doing is that's just measuring the thickness of the chest, and then it'll actually start going. So that's just something to know. In all, it took only 10 seconds of downtime for this entire event to happen. And remember, because we're using the natural pauses, the 3-second pause for ventilations, there really was very little downtime. In all, we had to eat 4 seconds. 6 seconds, the 2-3-second pauses, were natural pauses anyways that were going to happen during this cardiac arrest event anyways, right? And so those don't really count against us. So really, it was only 4 seconds total of downtime that we had to eat. Not bad. Nice job, team. All right. This is going to be the fourth analyzed rhythm, and something to note on this analyzed rhythm. What you'll notice is that the AED wanted to analyze, and the ACCD was stopped right here. Unfortunately, during all this time this was analyzing, and the ACCD was started prior to the analyzing phase being done. And so here you can see that the AED initially said non-shockable segment, and typically there's 2 segments that are done, right? So this is one segment, this is a second segment. Second segment said non-shockable, but unfortunately the ACCD was started up again prior to the AED fully being completed with its analyzing phase. And so as the ACCD was on, the AED interpreted this rhythm right here as a shockable rhythm. Well, once that was done, the AED started charging. So as you can see here, it says shockable, shock advised. The AED started charging. During the charging phase, the ACCD was paused again. Remember, we want to do compression during the entire charging phase, but the ACCD was paused again. The patient was shocked in this spot here, and then it took a couple seconds for us to get back on the chest or push the start button on the ACCD. So let's talk about how this should have gone down. AED wants to analyze. We go ahead and stop and pause the ACCD. Allow it to continue to do the whole analyzing phase until it says no shock advised, and then we would start compressions again. Again, this was a non-shockable rhythm. The person that's stopping the ACCD, their finger should be on the play button in anticipation of either it saying no shock advised or it starts charging. Either way, your finger, whoever's in charge of the ACCD, should be on that play button. As soon as the AED says no shock advised or it starts charging, you quickly push that play button. So there really shouldn't be much of a delay whatsoever, okay? And then if it was a shockable rhythm and it does start charging and we do push the play button on the ACCD, remember, we do not need to stop compressions to shock. We can shock while the ACCD is doing compressions. So those are some things to keep in mind. Again, I just want to focus that this was not a shockable rhythm, but because of the ACCD being done, it interpreted as a shockable rhythm. Now, something I want to note, CHEMS has recently hired a person to review all cardiac arrests. And so every time we download a cardiac arrest, AED, and the ACCD, that data automatically goes to CHEMS for their own review. And this was reviewed in the CHEMS office as well. So there's definitely some room of improvement here. And that's something that we can now, thankfully, because of this data, we can identify and we can work to improve it. All right. So at this point, the ALS team is on scene. The monitor was switched over from AED to their monitor, and so this is just ACCD data. And what we're going to focus on is essentially these chunks of data here. Okay, this is going to be a really quick point. All rounds of compressions with the ACCD were 2 minutes long, exactly. In fact, maybe 1 or 2 seconds, one way or the other, but essentially they were all around 2 minutes long, and all pauses were less than 10 seconds. So nice job to the team leader on keeping track of those times. Well done there. Ultimately, this patient was not successfully resuscitated and was pronounced dead on scene.